Alright, this episode is not gonna be as long, but yeah, it's probably gonna be like 30 minutes, maybe 45. We get and actually no. Sorry if you hear sorry if you hear like a loud thing in the background. That's if you know what it is, you know what it is, cause that's that big ass. It's a PlayStation, no? It's fucking jet engine. Alright, but anyway, Naruto says, as he says, that's where my sacred weapon is. As Elizabeth says, why is your sacred weapon in Britannia? And he says, I sold it to some random merchant for some money, for like a lot. As he says, how much? He says 80 million yen. As he says, wow. As he says, yeah. Now we have to go find him. As Meliodas sighs, and he says, I honestly don't feel like it. He says, I don't really feel like it though. As Elizabeth says, well, whose fault is that? As he says, what do you mean? As he says, you should have never sold your sacred treasure. As she says, as he looks at Elizabeth, and he says, yeah, well, I needed the money, so. And she says, why? She says, what did you need it for? As he says to eat something, of course. As she says, you could have asked me. As time skipped to where they get to Britannia, and Elizabeth is arguing with Meliodas of how I thought she could just ask them for food, and he didn't have to sell his thing. Now they have to come back over here. As he says, you know, not mean to be. He says, I don't mean to be a nuisance, but you're being annoying, Liz. As she says, what? As he says, you're being kind of annoying. As she looks at him with a very serious face, and bro, she looks at him with a very serious face, and says, how am I annoying? As he says, well, do you hear yourself? As she, oh my, nobody came up. As he says, yeah. She says, yeah, I do, but I'm just saying the truth. As Meliodas laughs as he laughs as he says, bro, Gordon Hayward is not that good. He laughs as he says, now, let's get my sacred treasure and just go defeat, he says, let's get me and Diana sacred treasure and just defeat this idiot god. As Naruto says, Bond says, hey, let's make a challenge. He says, hey, let's defeat the Demon King too. As he says, Meliodas says, all right. As he says, Elizabeth, you might be very helpful in that battle. As he says, why you say that? As, oh my God drop people. As he says, why'd you say that? And he says, because, I mean, you're an angel, light powers, hurt the darkness. As she says, oh yeah. As she says, come on, Liz. As she says, well, I'm not dumb. He says, I never said you were. As she looks at him with the face of, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. And he says, hey, I was just joking. As Liz says, let's go. As Liz says, Liz, let's go. Liz, she says, oh, my nigga passed the ball. She says, let's just get this treasure and sacred thingy and move on. As, he laughs and he said, it's called a sacred treasure, Liz. As she says, yeah, just let's get this and move on. as as he says, yeah, come on. As they go to a merchant, and as they get to this merchant, he's an old man. As he's like, basically he's an old man, and he says we haven't had any customers today, and I really do need some cash. As he says, as he says that he says, oh, no, he says, daughter, go sell yourself. We need cash. As she says, no, I'm not doing that again. As he smacks her, and he says, damn it, bitch, do you hear me? Go sell yourself. As she says, yes, father. God, at the corner of the age of love. As she walks out the door to see people walking in. As she turns around and says, I don't have to sell myself. As oh yeah, she says I don't have to sell myself. As she goes and she doesn't sell herself. She walks back into the thing, and the man looks at her and says, he says, didn't I give you something to do? And she says, yeah, but I didn't. She said, yeah, but I don't want to do that. And he says, and plus, I was supposed to give that to the one I love. As Meliodas, he's like, what's going on? He says, what's going on? As he says, the man says, none of your business. As he says, can I get a ball, please? Oh, yeah, he says, none of your business. As he says, okay. And he says, Meliodas says that, he says, I was looking to buy as he sees a sacred treasure. As he says that. As he says, kid, that's gonna cost a lot of money. As she's lying. And he says it's mine, so I should just get it back for free, right? As the bartender laughs, and he says, I found it, so. And he says, no. As he says, what do you mean no? It's mine. As he says, kid, some little boy gave this to me a lot of years back. As he says, wait, you're that old man? And he says, yeah. As he says, you must be the little boy then. As he says, yeah, I am. As he says, what happened to your company? You had a lot of money. You gave me 80 million for that thing. As he says, I know. It's just that it's plummeted into the ground after pretty much everyone grew up. No one wants to become a Magic Knight anymore. As everyone, he says, what? Everyone used to love to become, everybody wanted to become a Magic Knight back in my day. As he says, yeah, kid, I know that. As he says, I really need money. As he says, well, can I get it back for free? As he says, nah, you're gonna have to pay. As he says, as he looks at the man, and he says, sorry for this. And she says, for what? As he slices his head off, and he looks at the daughter, and he says, actually, no, he doesn't slice the head off. He looks at the daughter. He says, well, no, he says, I don't have any cash on me. As he says, the daughter, actually, no, he says, I don't have any cash on me. As Meliodas says, he says, I don't have any cash on me. Is there anything else I can pay you with? As he says, yeah. And he says, what? As he says, that girl. As Meliodas says, Elizabeth. As he says, yeah. I don't think so. Why aren't you not moving? He says, yeah, I don't think so. Oh my, do the alley hoop. He says, yeah, I don't think so. As he says, oh no, he looks at Elizabeth and he says, what do you want? As he says that little girl, he says that girl there, she'll pay off. He says she'll make it where you can get anything for free if you just give me her. As he thinks of an idea, he says, okay. As Elizabeth says, what? Meliodas? And he says, yeah, I never loved you. I just used you for your body. As Meliodas grabs the sword. As the man says, come here, y'all, I'm right now. As he's frothing out of his breath. I mean, that don't make sense. He's frothing out of his mouth. And he says, he's about to touch her. As Meliodas says, he activates his second curse mark and kills the man. And he says, I was just joking, Elizabeth. As she smacks him with her light power and says, I hate you. Don't talk to me ever again. As he says, then how are we supposed to make babies? As she starts blushing. As she starts blushing. And Naruto and Meliodas says, how are we supposed to make babies? As she says, she doesn't say anything. Oh. As she doesn't say anything, Meliodas says, huh? He says, As he says, actually. He says, actually. Actually, no. He says, sorry for all that. He says, yeah. But this last time he said it. Basically, after she smacks him, he said, and the babies and stuff like that. Basically, Meliodas says that let's get Diane a secret treasure. As he takes a secret treasure as a sacred treasure. Sorry, he takes a sacred treasure. As he takes a sacred treasure. Basically, the man's daughter says, the man's daughter says, you killed my dad. As he says, thank you. As he says, no problem. As he says, holy shit. As he says, I just killed her dad. As he says, oh, that should be fine. As he gets Diane a secret weapon, and it's the same one that she had in the actual 7DS in canon. It's the same little staff or whatever the fuck that was. Why am I guarding Curry? Almost 60. Oh my god. Oh my. Sorry. I just took this short one. So yeah, basically, sorry I'm saying basically a lot, but yeah. Naruto says, Meliodas, sorry, not, Naruto. Ooh. Meliodas says, Meliodas says that, he says, hey, Diane, is that alright, that weapon? As she says, yeah, it's fine. As she says, alright. As King says, he says, hey Diane, is that weapon alright? As she says, yeah. As Meliodas says, hey, calm down, bro, I'm not trying to steal your girl. Meliodas says, King, calm down, I'm not trying to steal your girlfriend. as they expect me to guard Stephen Curry. Stephen fucking Curry. As basically, like, you suck. As basically Naruto says that basically he says, oh my damn. Basically Naruto or Meliodas says that we should leave. They say, yeah, come on. As they go and they go back to the whatchamacallit, as to the Boar Inn. As they go back to the Boar Hat, he says, they go back to the Boar Hat. Oh my god, another ball, get out the way. They go back to the Boar Hat and Stephen Curry. Sorry, not Stephen Curry. They go back to the Boar Hat and basically when they go back to the Boar Hat, they whatchamacallit. They go back to the Boar Hat and they just start hitting their journey. Bond says, who should we kill first? The Demon King or he says, who should we kill first? The Demon King or God? As he says, let's kill the Demon King first. As he says, you sure? As Bond says, yeah. As he sighs and he says, oh, as he says, as everybody looks at him and says, what? Bond says that, sorry. And Bond says, how did we even get there? As Bond, they want me to guard. I'm sorry. They want me to guard a 98 overall and I'm fucking a 67. I'm sorry. I'm a fucking god. Go fucking Stephen fucking Curry, bro. That's who y'all want me to guard? That's who y'all... That's who y'all want me to guard? Meliodas, he says that... Where's the foul? Meliodas, he says that, he says, Bond says, we just have to go, as he says we have to go to the Emperor's Dome, as, right here, pass the rock, as he says, what's that? As he says, the Emperor's Dome, it's basically the gateway to, he says it's basically the gateway to go to hell. As he says, Merlin says, my father went there one time, or he says my father went there. He was only there for a couple hours, or he says he was only there for a minute, and he came back half dead, or he says he came back as old as ever. As she says, time, it moves differently in that world. As she says, if you pass the ball to me, pass the ball for me. As she says, Bond says, alright, me and Meliodas will go. King, you'll help defeat God. As he says, but I want to fight the Demon King too. As he says, yeah, but you're not immortal. As he says, so? And he says, you heard Merlin, the time moves differently in that world. As he says, and he says, I can just use a teardrop to heal myself. As he says, yeah, well, aren't you gonna run out? As he says, aren't you gonna run out? As Meliodas says, not Meliodas. This shit's annoying. Not Meliodas. King says, I have a lot, and Bond says, but you're gonna run out of energy. As he says, and you got one of you guys can heal me, right? Meliodas with your demon power. As he says, Meliodas looked at him and says, dude, you're not coming. As he says, oh, fine. As he says sorry. As Meliodas, as we get to we get to Meliodas. Yeah, we get to Meliodas, and Meliodas basically, he says, alright, this. He says, Bond, tell the pigment the coordinates to the dome thingy. As he says, oh, it's called the Emperor's Dome. As he says, how, he says, Merlin, you'll be the one to activate it. As he says, okay. As he says, okay. As he says, okay. It might take a lot of power. He says it's going to take some power. As he looks at Elizabeth, he says, Elizabeth, are you willing to help? As she says, yes, Merlin. Yes, Mrs. Merlin. As he says, call me Merlin. As she says, I told you, call me Merlin. As she says, okay, Merlin. And, sorry. I just did the shortest way. Look at he's touching open plant, turn into a huckster. Basically, he goes and he says, long way to eating him. He goes and they go to the whatchamacallit, the Emperor's Dome. As it's like a, if y'all ever watch Minecraft, I mean play Minecraft, if y'all do, I'm saying if y'all do, then y'all would the ruin in, not the ruin, what's it called? If y'all, it's like an Ember mod. I mean the End City mod, where you can, it's like a better version of the End City. And basically it's like these patterns of things you have to connect, and then you have to get crystals, certain crystals, to actually put them to like activate it. So that's what's going on. As they time skip, they get all the crystals, and he says, now it's time to go to war. As King Meliodas says, King, you're not coming. As he says, oh yeah. As he sighs and he says, oh yeah. As Meliodas says, hey, he says, hey, even if you're not coming, you still have to, he says, you and Escanor need to protect the girls. As he says, Merlin, you're powerful enough to protect yourself. As he says, you could probably rival me. As he says, as Escanor says, yeah, she is pretty powerful. As they go into the portal. As they go into this portal, they feel their whole body changing. As he says, oh wow, that's different. As Bond says, if I get too old, I'm just gonna kill myself so I can restart my age. And he says, alright. As we get time skip to whether him and Meliodas are going to the Demon King's portal. Or they find like a palace. As they find this palace, basically, it's, let's go, we win. Basically, they find, it's like a end stone. If y'all play Minecraft, if y'all go into the Nether fortress, that's what it looks like. But basically Naruto, but I mean Naruto, Meliodas. Basically Meliodas. He says. Meliodas says. He says, now that he says now that we he says now that we you know whatchamacallit, that we now that we now that we he says now that we're here, he says now that we're here, as he says we can he says we can whatchamacallit, as he says we can what, Bond, I mean he says yeah we can, he says we can what, Captain, as he says we can find and kill the Demon King, as he says we can, as he says I believe we can do it, as he says I believe we can do it. Meliodas shows a he says it's here. He says it's here. I can feel it. I can feel his power. As let me check the time. Alright, yeah, I'm ended off soon. He says I can feel his power. It's getting stronger. As he says, Meliodas says, a king says, or Bond, sorry. Bond says, he says, so, do you think he's gonna be strong? As Bond gets his head smacked out, his head falls off. As his head regrows and says, Captain, what was that for? As he said, that wasn't me. As he looks around to see the Demon King sitting on his throne. As he says, I see you come to kill me. As he says, no, we just come to have a little play date. Of course we came to kill you. As Naruto runs, and he says, Naruto runs as he basically as he gets there, they rush the Demon King. Bond uses his Fox, no, it's not Foxhorn, Hunter Fest thing? Yeah, Hunter Fest. He uses Hunter Fest, and he basically he's Hunter Fest, and he grabs the power of the Demon King. He can't really take it all. Like, no, hold on. Hey, don't think of that dirty. He can't take everything. He can't take all of the Demon King power. I didn't mean she. The Demon King rushes them as he says, "You weaklings," as he stabs Meliodas and Bond in the heart. As he says, you couldn't even take a mere 1% of my power. As he says, just to make that. As he says, basically, Meliodas says, Meliodas says that, he said that, bro, doesn't make that. Basically, Meliodas says that, he says, he's actually powerful. As he says, I might have to watch out and use my, he's actually powerful. I might have to use my fourth state. As he goes and he basically goes and he says, he closes his eyes to open them and show demonic power. What the fuck was that? Just shot. Alright, but yeah, he goes and he shows demonic power. Basically, this is the poem in the bottom left. in that form. That's the form that he's in right now. As he says this is gonna be fun. As they counter and parry each other's abilities, Bond uses Fox Hunt, and then he takes out one of the Fox Hunt. He takes out one of the Demon King's heart. As the Demon King grunts, as he says, "Damn you!" As he smacks Bond, Demon King has 3 hearts, by the way. As Meliodas, he says, "Ha, he isn't the only one." As he says, "Damn it, King would have been useful for this." He says King would have been useful for this battle. As he says, Bond says, "Why you say that?" As he says, his ability, his he says his whatchamacallit ability, the Sunlight Devastation. He says his Sunlight Devastation ability would have been helpful. As he says, yeah, it would have been, but King's not here now. So, as he says, what the fuck? He says, as he says, as he says, yeah, it would have been. It would probably destroyed all his hearts in one go. As you're not getting the ball no more. As he says, yeah. He says, yeah. As they're talking about fighting the Demon King, and the Demon King is like shocked. He says, "Fight me and stop talking." As Bond says, "Nah, I don't think it's necessary to fight you." Well, he says, "I don't think it's necessary." He says, "I don't think that's necessary." The fuck? As he gets Bond. I mean, not Bond. My bad. He doesn't get Bond. I meant to say that he gets I meant to say that he says Bond now. As Bond says, pretty sure it's Fox Hunt. He says Fox Hunt as he grabs one of his hearts, and as he says, as he says, as the captain says, he says revenge counter, as all the attacks that the Demon King just did just went back to him. It was mostly taijutsu attacks, but hey, as the Demon King feels his own punches, as he says, "Damn it, what the hell was that?" As he says, "What the hell was that?" As he says, "That was," I mean, Bond says, I mean, not Bond. Meliodas says, "That was my revenge counter." Now, as the Demon King says, "Then take this," as he gets a black orb and he shoots it at Meliodas, and he says, "You idiot," as he says, "Full counter," and it comes back to the Demon King 10 times stronger. As he says, the fuck? As he says, oh, come on, man. He says, "Bro, go back. What did you?" Sorry. Basically Meliodas says that he says as he goes and he goes and basically he says that I mean, a lot of green releases. As he goes and he says, "Bro, pass me a ball." He basically Meliodas goes and says that. Basically, he goes and he says that. He says, "This is." He says this battle was not fun. As he's stepping on the Demon King's head, and says, "Are you dead yet?" As he says, he looks at Bond and says, "I think he is." As he kicks his head off and says, "We're too strong, Bond." As they get to the demon. I mean they start walking back the way that they came. As Meliodas says, Meliodas looks at the sky as he sees it's cracking. As he says, "No." He says, "No, no, 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 no. This isn't supposed to happen. I thought we killed him." As he says, "Yeah, we did." As he says, think. As he says Meliodas says that. He says, "Oh no, I think hell is actually collapsing." As Bond says, "It might be." As they rush and they barely get to the portal. As they both make it. As they come back to see Meliodas and Bond. See Meliodas and Bond. They say, Elaine hurries and kisses Bond. And Bond doesn't, I mean, Elaine doesn't, King, his name is King. King doesn't really care anymore about Bond and Elaine's relationship because Diana, like talks to him about it. And he'll agree with anything Diana says. So yeah. But Naruto, Meliodas says that he says he looks at them kissing as he looks at them kissing as Elizabeth, yeah, that's her name. As Elizabeth says, oh yeah, she says, "Meliodas," as she says, "Yeah, what is it?" As she kisses him and says, "I missed you while you were gone." As she says, "I wasn't gone for that long." As she says, "I know, but your gropes there, I missed them." As he says, "How long was I gone?" As she says, "About a couple hours." As she says, "Oh." He says, "Oh," and he says, "Bond." Elaine goes to Elaine and Bond. She says, "You haven't aged a day." I don't know what Merlin was talking about. And she says, "Yeah." She says, "Yeah." I said that wrong. Ass. I said that weird. Ass. Sorry, but as he says, how about we watch a movie tonight?" As they ask me how I got this technology. Okay, just don't. They just do. Okay, they just do. As they go to whatchamacallit. Diana says, oh my god, I keep forgetting their names. So many names to keep up with. Meliodas and Elizabeth. Meliodas picks up Elizabeth as he says, he picks up Elizabeth as she says, "Meliodas, I can walk." As he says, "I know. I just didn't want to damage your cute little legs." As she blushes. He got the shit crossed out of him. She blushes as Naruto says, as he thinks about a couple nights ago, or a couple, like last week, on that night, as he says, I might do it again. As he says, she says, do what again, Meliodas? As he says, oh, I said that out loud. As she says, do what again, Meliodas? As he says, as Meliodas says, nothing. As she says, are you sure? As she says, yeah. As she says, then why'd you say I'm gonna do it again? As he smiles and kisses her and says, it's nothing, don't worry about it. As he, in his head, he says, oh, it's something, alright. Sure, something. As she looks at him, and she says, ooh. She looks at him and she says, as Meliodas says, as they get into the bar thing. I forgot it was called. It's too much to keep up with. They get into the thing as Meliodas says, hey, as he puts Elizabeth down on the couch. As he says, Liz, and she turns around and says, yes. As he says, would you like some sake? As he says, yes, please. As he says, okay. As he pours a couple cups of sake and gives her one. As we get to Naruto, time skip. They're drunk. Elizabeth's drunk, actually. Meliodas, he's not that drunk. He's like tipsy, but he knows what he's doing. As she says, like he knows he knows what he's doing. As Elizabeth looks at Meliodas with a drunken face, and she sits on him. Actually, no. She lays down on top of him, and she says, Meliodas, and she says, yeah. And he says, yeah, what is it, Elizabeth? And she says, do you want to make a baby? As Meliodas, he blushes a little bit, as he says, no, not right now. As she says, but I want a baby, so we're going to make one. As Meliodas says, huh? As she rips off his pants, and we time skip to where Meliodas wakes up, as he says, he's shivering, as he says, Elizabeth, oh my, as he starts picturing the images from last night, as he says, it hurts so bad. She wakes up, she runs to the restroom and pukes. As everyone walks into the common room, this is not fucking in there, sorry. They all walk into the living room. As they say, what the hell? Why? He says, it hurts. As everyone says, what hurts? As she says, Elizabeth, she was drunk and she didn't let me pull out. As everyone starts laughing. As she said, it isn't funny. And she starts crying even more. As Elizabeth come out the thing, cheery and happy. As she says, Meliodas. As she says, he runs out the house. As she says, what's going on with Meliodas? As he says, I don't know. As everyone time, we time. Sorry, I'm trying to stop my yawns. We time skip to where Naruto, and Meliodas, he says, actually no, it's a month. As everyone's partying. I'm gonna say that Diane and King had a kid. Yeah. Diane and King Diana King got a kid. Diana King had a kid. And I'm just calling that bitch Diana. I don't care. Diana King had a kid. Bonnet Elaine had a kid. Now, question is, did Elizabeth and Meliodas have a kid? That's the question. You will find out next episode. What if Meliodas? What if Naruto was Meliodas? You will find that out next episode.